Well, I think I'm not sure if the Oman stuff has been made public or not, but maybe it has. I think the Saudi Arabia stuff has not been made public, but the word I was getting was that these other countries in the Middle East, countries with enormous wealth, have were beginning to embrace Bitcoin as a form of digital gold, and they were stacking, and that they were actually there to, among other things, ask Trump's son and Manafort, hey, we're thinking of doing more of this. We're thinking of announcing it. And I was told by the Policy Institute guys that the U.S. response back was, yeah, it's all great. We're very supportive, but just don't jump in front of us. Let us do our thing first, and then go ahead, and announce it. So, as I say, I just, to me, that's just huge. I mean, there's trillions of dollars in these countries, and they've traditionally been sound money countries. I mean, the Arab culture loves gold, the precursor to Bitcoin. And so if they're now learning to make the jump from being investors in gold to investors in Bitcoin, that's a really big deal, in my opinion. So I couldn't have been more bulled up coming out of the conference. And you always hear these things, and then you wait and see, well, is it really going to happen, right? Is Trump really going to deliver? Are we going to get a strategic Bitcoin reserve? And then there were some disappointing things with the Trump coin, the Melania coin, and all the other shit coins getting put into another, bucket. But at the end of the day, he came through. And although they have not announced plans to buy a lot, they've announced that they're intending to buy if they can do it in a revenue neutral way. And they've said they're not going to sell. And then the Loomis bill today, as you probably saw, has picked up some additional sponsors. And so, I mean, this is how it happens, right? Slowly but surely, the consensus grows that this is the asset to own.
Yeah, the recent signing of the SBR executive order
Right.
has completely shifted the tone of how Bitcoiners are viewing Trump. It's almost funny. It's literally on a weekly basis. He's
Yeah.
Bitcoiners' best friends, and then the next week he's everybody's worst enemy.
Well,
I mean, like you,
he's a little all over the map, and he had to drag the crypto guys along with him, sadly, because they gave him a lot of money. And this is politics, right? It's the art of compromise. And us maxis are kind of like, oh God, why are you doing all that? But I kind of get it. And who knows? I mean, I don't know if the crypto and Bitcoin people made the difference in the vote, but it certainly didn't hurt. And so he's got to do what he's got to do, right?
yeah, the man's a master of 3D chess for sure.
He really is. Yeah.
And at least from the Bitcoiners' perspective, it was very reassuring to see that Ethereum, Solana, some of these alternative coins are being left out of the strategic reserve. It really
Us.
signals that the Trump administration and even Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick and Bissent really understand the value proposition of Bitcoin as a
I think
whole.
that's right. I think that's right.
Super reassuring.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that this has been signed in as an executive order. It hasn't been passed by Congress. And in addition to that, the way they're funding, the initial coins of the reserves are through seized coins. So
Right.
what do you think about this? Is this a win for sound money, or is this just a half step? Is there more work that needs to be done
Well, there's
on
there's
our end?
obviously more work that needs to be done, but it's a big win. Let's face it. I mean, it could, it'd be nice to have it enacted through legislation so that if we have Team Blue winning in 4 years, they can't undo it, right?
Right.
But I think even Team Blue, has caught some heat because I mean, didn't they sell almost an equal number of coins, and they left $17 billion on the table as a result of selling those at much lower prices. So I feel like we've got knowledge now at the highest levels of the U.S. government that this is an important strategic asset to hold. Excuse me, and that's a big deal. And so now every other country in the world has to focus on, gee, if this becomes the neutral reserve currency, and anyone who studies what's going on knows that we need a neutral reserve currency as a result of Triffin's dilemma. They might start asking, well, and many of them, by the way, have bet on gold. We know China, for example, has bet hugely on gold, has a lot more gold than they say they have based on the import export data. And so, they're going to have to sit there and say to themselves, gee, are we making the right bet? Because this is digital gold and it's better than gold in many respects. And, I mean, this is Sailor's point, which is, we should sell all our gold and use it to buy Bitcoin, which I, generally speaking, kind of agree with. But I don't think we're there yet. And then again, there's some debate as to how much gold we really have. And I find it interesting. Trump said, he's going to go audit Fort Knox. I hope he does. I hope he finds it's there. I'm a little worried that, that might be an empty promise. I'm not sure they're going to like what they find, but that's another bridge they got to cross. But look, this is a step along the way, and my sense is there'll need to be more steps. They need to find revenue neutral ways to grow the reserve. I think the minute they start growing it, that'll be another big step. And I think they will grow it. I think they know that they need to have a higher Bitcoin price to help them, because stable coins, which are a small piece of the overall Bitcoin network today, not insignificant, but smaller, are big buyers of treasury bills. And guess what? The U.S. has a lot of treasury bills to sell. And so if the Bitcoin price goes higher and stablecoin market gets bigger, and then those stablecoins need to buy treasury bills, well, that's all good for the U.S. government. So, and Basant knows that. They from back channels, what I've heard, they get it. And so this is really, really positive. And now, does it manifest in the price immediately? No, the price is down right now. I mean, it's like so many Wall Street things, it's kind of buy the rumor and sell the news. And, we bought the rumor, got to 106. And of course, now the news is getting sold. And, I think it's more what's going on right now. I think it's more actually liquidity driven, just that, the world is kind of turning risk off on the overall stock market because the economy appears to be rolling over, and all these tariffs and all the things Trump has made it clear he's going to disrupt things. He's going to break things, as necessary. And one could argue that he's trying to break the stock market in order to help the bond market, because they've got a lot of debt to roll over, and it's a problem. So it's an interesting time, I'll tell you that. I mean, there's going to be more going on in this monetary stuff the next 5 years than there has been in the last 20. We're really in for a lot of change, in my opinion.
A lot of change is an understatement. It's almost hard to unpack what's going on a week to week basis with
Yeah,
all the monetary changes. You mentioned treasury bills.
yeah,
That's always kind of been the underpinning at the global level, for
right.
all these nation states to get exposure to, our economic powerhouse. And, you know, interest rates are stagnant right now.
Right.
And I think the Fed put a pause on them earlier this quarter. They're talking about maybe potentially lowering them into Q2. But treasury bills are in question, largely due to actions driven by the previous administration and, Russia and the Ukraine war. I think BRICS has realized that it's not the safety net that it once was, and I think they've started to look to alternative assets. To your point earlier about Trump just looking to break what he can break, why is he doing that, and why maybe the rush to signing the SBR, and how does that interplay with one another?
Well, I think the SBR, they signed it because they wanted to signal that we were going to be a leader in the crypto area. I mean, one thing that's great about the way Trump was managed into this, you recall 3 years ago, Trump hated Bitcoin, didn't really understand it, and honestly, to this day, I don't think he completely understands it. But I'm sure his advisors do. But I think what's going on here is that he wanted to keep his promises to this group. I mean, I thought it was extremely positive, obviously, to let Ross go as he had promised. And he's a competitive guy, and I think the people who sold it to him, in my view, very smartly said, "Look, this is a race with China, and we don't want to let them get ahead." And he doesn't like to lose, and so that's my guess as to why he did it. I'm not sure he fully understands all the implications. I mean, I'm not sure anyone really fully understands the implications. I mean, if they do what Saylor is talking about doing, which is sell the gold used to buy Bitcoin, I mean, this is really, really a massive devaluation of the dollar. And there've been mixed signals coming out of this administration. I mean, Basant has said, we want the dollar to remain the world's reserve currency, but then he's also said we need a weaker dollar, in order to balance trade. And so those two things are slightly in contrast, don't go together. But I think, the world has been unbalanced massively because of the strong dollar policy and because of the financialization of the United States. And Percent said something else I thought was very, very indicative of where they're going, and that is, Wall Street's done extremely well for the past 20 years, and Main Street hasn't done so well. And it's Wall Street that drives the stock market, and the people who voted Trump in, a lot of them don't own stocks. They're the working class, and they don't necessarily have enough capital to own stocks. So if the stock market goes down, that's not going to hurt them that much per se, except insofar as it then turns into a recession and they start losing their jobs. So the problem is it's all interconnected, and the whole economy has been built upon cheap money and puffing up asset values. And I think, they want to try and reverse that process, but I think the word I used earlier, is it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be hard. And they've even come out and said that. And I think Besant also said that, it's very clear that to the degree they're going to be disruptive, they should do it right up front, because in 2 years the voters get another say, and in 4 years they get another big say on what team is going to be running the country. And so if you're going to have trouble, if you break things right now, one can argue, or he can make an argument that, hey, Biden left us with a pile of shit, and we're doing the best we can given what we were left. And hopefully then things will be looking better as the 4 years rolls around, so that JD will have a chance to win. So there's a lot of interesting cross currents going on, but they know that we have to weaken the dollar to balance trade, and really to kind of reshore manufacturing here. I mean, another related part of all this is, it became very clear in this war that we couldn't even build the shells we needed to supply the Ukraine for the war, and manufacturing in the U.S. has been hollowed out, and that's got to change. And the way for that to change is a weaker dollar, so that we basically bring manufacturing back here, and it's competitive. Now, the thing that I think most people aren't talking about, including Trump, is that tariffs and a weaker dollar also will result in domestic inflation, more domestic inflation. But hopefully, if it's domestic inflation, but everyone's fully employed, then the two will balance out, and there'll be wage growth for those who are the workers, and the people who will not do as well are the people who hold bonds, or the Wall Street people who've made all their money off financialization. So I think that's kind of the big picture of what they're trying to do. My partner describes, I have a partner at Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, David Foley, said this is brain surgery. I mean, it's going to be really hard. And we don't really know exactly how it's going to unfold. But I think one conclusion I draw is that almost no matter how it unfolds, it's good for Bitcoin, because it's likely to lead to some more monetary chaos. And this was the point of my book, which was that really all forms of monetary chaos, ultimately force the Federal Reserve into using the only tool they have, the only hammer they really know, which is print. So, they're going to, when things get rough, the market falls enough, the bond market, has an upheaval, enough people are laid off, people are crying for stimmy checks, whatever it might be, the solution will somehow be to print the money to solve it, versus letting a complete depression unfold and a complete collapse of the system. And therefore, that printing will be inflationary, and therefore, in an inflationary environment, you want to hold assets the government can't print. And the two premier assets in that category, in that bucket, are Bitcoin and gold, in that order, with Bitcoin being better than gold, but they're both unprintable. You can't print gold. So, well, although they have paper gold, but in general, you can't print real gold.
So very true. No. A lot to unpack there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the comparison of the Trump administration performing brain surgery on the economy here to try and taper the everyday American's expectation on what they promised, right? Preventing inflation from rising, but subsequently also understanding from an economic standpoint that they have to let inflation run to let the economy grow,
right,
is a very hard dynamic to navigate. And I don't know how you position the messaging out there. And in parallel to that, right? So we just had the executive order signed, right? That's on the governmental level. We
mm-hmm.
have at the corporate level guys like Michael Saylor who are building their own parallel Wall Street with this corporate Bitcoin treasury strategy. I know you and your peers at the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund are also seeking, companies who are adopting a similar strategy, but more specifically, companies that are, looking to bring over high performance compute, AI agents, energy markets, and
Yep.
that sort of thing. How does your average everyday person make any sense of this? Like, what are the key points and takeaways that they should be paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, to boil it down to its simplest form, Alan, I think that what we've entered, and I think a lot of people have missed this. I think the average person, the average investor, I still encounter this a great deal, feels like stocks are the place to be. They know we live in an inflationary world, and the way you hedge that is stocks. And stocks have slightly outperformed gold over long periods of time. and stocks do represent claims on businesses that throw off, earnings and dividends. And so stocks aren't bad per se when they're appropriately priced relative to what you're buying. Problem is that the stock market right now is at, historic highs on any metric you want to use, the Buffett indicator, whatever. It looks like 2000 or 1929. And so you're not getting everyone's in that stock bet already. They've already made that bet. And so there's not, it's fully priced, in my opinion. There's not a lot of upside in it. And I think what happened in 2020 and changed is that we went from a 40-year period of deflation where, interest rates were coming down, driven by a lot of things, driven by all Jeff Booth's stuff about technology and so on and so forth, and the China price. But we went from that period and it got ridiculous. I mean, we had $18 trillion of negative yielding bonds. I mean, that's about as deflationary as you can get when you have to pay somebody to hold, to hold your money. I mean, come on. So that it was just extreme, right? I mean, the 10-year was at 50 basis points in March of 2020.